Hello. I'm going to start by saying I don't care what sort of dogs they were. You wouldn't leave rats in that situation. And the second thing I'm going to say is I've got a few notes here and it looks like this is going to be a long video, so I'm not going to do that to you. I'll break it into two. But let's get on with the main event. I want to talk about betrayal. I'll get on to the other subject in the next video. Again, still betrayal, by the way. I've had a few comments under the last video when I was talking about the abandoned dogs in Kabul airport, and some of them were obviously very sympathetic, and then there were one or two where the comments ran along the lines of they weren't service dogs, they were contract dogs, or they were refuge dogs or something. Where are your minds, you guys? How could you possibly... What does it matter? I don't care if they were service dogs or if they were contract dogs or refuge dogs or if they were spoilt pooches from, I don't know what, little old ladies in New York apartments. Actually, I wouldn't even care, as I said, if they were rats. You don't abandon animals to die locked up in cages. Is that clear? Well, it obviously wasn't clear to the American army. So for those of you most upset by this situation, I'm not going to go into the details right now, but what I'm going to be doing is talking about betrayal. Yes, that is the only word. Dante, in his epic, The Divine Comedy, reserved the deepest circle of hell for those who betrayed. Because betrayal it's just about the worst sin possible. In my last video, I poured my heart out and my emotions because I'd just seen a newspaper article which showed a lot of dogs in cages in an obviously abandoned military facility. And it was accompanied by a report that these had been left by the US Army. Now, I blamed the soldiers for walking out on their dogs. I want to revise that. I have to apologise because it isn't clear what happened there. The news report was certainly unequivocal, but then news reports are not exactly known for accuracy, especially recently. As I said, there are several stories going around that they were not, the standard army dogs. But that's a story that's come out of the Biden administration. And frankly, I don't believe anything the Biden administration says. So my first reaction was to suspect that this contrary narrative was injected into the public discourse to dilute what was obviously a horrible truth. I believed then and still do believe that those dogs were official, at least in some way, because all those kennel cages are exactly the same. If they'd been rescue dogs from some rescue organisation, as some versions have it, they would have been in a variety of different sorts of cages and boxes, because rescue organisations, especially ones in a place like Afghanistan, I should think, would have containers, any old container that they could beg, steal or cobble together from all sorts of spare parts or whatever. They would be in varying conditions, shapes and colours, wouldn't they? Think about it. So I believe that those were official animals, but again, I keep saying it doesn't matter. Anyway, because of those containers, I'm pretty sure it was the army that abandoned them. Where I'm going to modify my opinion about the circumstances is here. I think that the handlers would not have been responsible for that abandonment. My guess is that the dogs were supposed to be loaded, or the commander told the men they were going to be loaded, but either because the commander was lying to them or because the person in charge of loading realised there wouldn't be room and didn't load them and just didn't tell anyone, or most likely of all, someone simply forgot in all the confusion and the rush and the chaos. Since those theories are only too appallingly possible, I retract what I said about the handlers themselves, because I just don't know. Also, I have to tell you that a subscriber sent me an email telling me that all military personnel, and that includes retired personnel, are getting letters from above telling them that they can't publicly criticise their commanding officers. And that would include the Commander-in-Chief. And if they did criticise their commanding officers, they'd lose their jobs and their pensions. I believe there is one very brave and principled Marine who has done just that. He decided he can't associate himself with such a bunch anymore and has dropped his job and his prospects, and now is broadcasting videos about it from an abandoned bus out in the wilds of Virginia or somewhere like that. But, well, it looks to me as if starving people out has been a feature of the Democratic Party for a while. Didn't Obama's more outspoken political opponents find themselves suddenly and for no apparent reason under intense and intrusive scrutiny from the Internal Revenue Service? I heard of a lot of cases of that. Obviously, this was done in the hope that reducing them to penury would shut them up. Or if they found something irregular, putting them in prison would. And judging from those dogs, they don't apply starvation just to humans now, do they? So back to the dogs. My hope is that the person who found the dogs opened up the cages. Again, I have no way of knowing this, and the person could quite easily have been some Taliban operative, and that doesn't bode well for those dogs. Whatever. Even if it were just some concerned individual, it doesn't change anything. You don't leave any animal like that. And I go back to what I was saying in my previous video and in a couple of ones prior to that, that the whole evacuation process was so badly handled. I mean, if you'd have sat yourself down and worked out a plan, a strategy that couldn't have any other effect but to go wrong at almost every stage, you couldn't have come up with a Horlicks as good as that. And the whole evacuation process was so chaotic. This sort of slip-up was guaranteed to happen. So whether they were service dogs, rescue dogs, contract dogs, lap dogs, or doggone rats, they were abandoned. That's all we need to know. And the injection of a story about them not being entirely official is the sort of thing you would expect from a Democratic Party which has no soul. Whatever the provenance of those dogs, the situation is an encapsulation of everything that's been done wrong and everything that's wrong with the present American government. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.